Okay, for our 4th grade watercolor skill builders, the page says, please do not paint directly on this page. We'll create them on separate papers. So you're going to get 4 white square papers that would fit into these squares in your sketchbook. And you're going to need to write your name on all 4 papers. Okay, now you're going to need a placemat to go under your work. Flip over your 4 so we don't see your name. And I'm going to keep this out so I can refer back to it. For you guys, I will probably just have this on the screen to help you refer back to it. That way we don't have to keep all our sketchbooks out at the same time. So the first one is Crayon Resists. So you're going to get a crayon. It can be any color you want. I like to use white. And you're going to press hard and draw something with white crayon. Then you can use any color in your watercolor tray by putting a puddle of water on top of the color that you want to use, wiggling the water around gently. The water will change from clear to that paint color, and you're going to paint over the top of your watercolor resist. And if you pressed hard enough with your crayon, it will still show up. So there's what I did. Okay, watercolor with salt. So students have trouble with the watercolor with salt. Not sure why, but I will tell you it needs to be a very wet paint. So I'm going to put plain water on my paper, and then I'm going to choose a color, and I'm going to put a lot of paint on my paper so it is really, really, really a wet piece of paper with water and with paint. Then I need a really dry salt. So if your salt is wet, it's not going to work. It's got to be dry. And then you just sprinkle this on top of your really wet paint. And what happens is that dry salt acts like a sponge, and it sucks that paint towards it, and it creates the speckles on your paper. And they're really, really beautiful. But they only work if you put a lot of wet, wet, wet paint and sprinkle really dry, 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 dry salt. Somehow these cups get wet. I don't know if people drip water in them or paint in them, but the salt gets wet and then it doesn't work. It has to be dry. So my third one is watercolor showing light and dark value. So I'm going to use this red violet color, and I'm going to get half my paper with plain water and then add a little bit of paint. Oh, that's really dark. So I want my paper to go light to dark. So now I need to rinse my paper off and just use plain water so that I can get a dark value down to a light value. So rinse my paper off, get just plain water. And so I have dark to light, but I think I'm going to add just a little bit more up here to make it a little bit darker. So you can definitely see it went from dark to light. And the way that you can make it dark is just by adding more and more of that color on top. And then the way you make it light is having a clean paintbrush and just using plain water along the edge that you want to be light. So I have shown light to dark value. And then on my last one, it's wet on wet using warm or cool colors. So you need to know what the warm colors or the cool colors are. Warm colors are reds, yellows, and oranges. Cool colors are blues, greens, and purples. I have this purple already wet, so I'm going to use that. And it says wet on wet. So that means you have to get your paper wet. And then you have to take wet paint. So wet on wet, wet paint on wet paper, and just touch it and let it kind of bleed and run together. And it can be very beautiful. And since it says cool colors, I don't have to limit it to just one color. I could go ahead and use and touch this green and let it kind of bleed and run with the purple. And there I have my 4 finished watercolor skill builders for my page. You're going to take this to the drying rack all together with your placemats. And then you'll put your paint tray away, rinse your paintbrush out, and put it Brussels side up in the